protect vulnerable people in the community that may find this disturbing and need help. So it was a way to sort of educate, awareness, and also, you know, with our mental health facts, sort of wrap up something in some way.
Any questions for this? No?
Thank you.
Sir?
Well, thank you.
I thought we were done, but it's all right.
My name is Ed Bryans, 27 Old Homestead Highway in Swansea. I have great respect for people who have spoke already, and it seems to cover. A lot of what I wanted to suggest has already been covered. Whether or not you guys have the authority, but I'm curious if that space could be designated as a mental health space during the Pumpkin Fest, if it could be shifted around so that various literature or outreach could be done at that space. I just think would be appropriate and wouldn't have to disturb the memorial. I also believe there's a certain kind of morbid tourism to it. It's been in the newspaper and, you know, on the web. So there may be people that make a special point of visiting that particular corner. Maybe they want to leave a memento themselves, but we could go a step further by making a giant cardboard card honoring the laughter, not the disaster. The card could be done, something could be done with that. You know, it was mentioned a memorial box or something in the Library Historical Society. But that, frankly, to me would be an appropriate time to clean up the Pumpkin Fest mess, and whether relics or items were recovered from that. It just kind of would go with, there's a major cleanup after the Pumpkin Fest, and it may be the appropriate time for that to go. But it's a proper send-off, and I think that would be healing in the community. There is underlying issues. There has been history in this community. I'll mention Thomas Ball, you know, a suicide across the street, basically. That was covered up with paint. I would like to see this dealt with in a more appropriate manner. That's basically all I have to add to this.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you. Okay. Well, we're back. Anyone else, public, have comments or questions at this point? So we're back at this point again to our Councilor Jacobs. I promise we'll get to it. I'm sorry. Well, there was this pause, nobody wanted to talk, and now we're ready to huddle and
Well, I don't want to go in a different direction too much, but because I think this is a very serious discussion and important. But I guess this question of part of what we're talking about is on a public space, and part of it's private, and is it two separate things in that respect? I just, you know, I'm wondering what kind of action can be taken, whether it's two separate issues. I guess that's my question.
Well, my understanding is, as far as what's on private property, we really have no say potentially whether or not, but I would defer to the city manager or attorney on that, whether or not that's true, in your opinion. City manager? Or?
Well, I won't steal the city attorney's thunder, but I did hear him talking to the code enforcement official.
I saw
It is on, it's private property, it's not a sign, it's not subject to the sign code.
Thank you. Any other members of the public have questions or comments at this point? Okay. So we can discuss. I just want to point one thing out, and and this is mainly because this meeting is being televised. Mr. Lindsay's comments about this letter being concerned that the display was glorifying suicide, I don't see any of that in the language of the letter that was submitted by Ms. Morris. So just for the record, just for us here, what I read was a concern, and nowhere did I see any language that said the display was somehow glorifying suicide, which is The 10th leading cause of death in this country, the 2nd leading cause of death for people between 25 and 34, and the 3rd leading cause of death for people between the ages of 15 and 24. So it is a serious health issue. I just wanted to clarify that as we move forward, that there may be people who believe that the display glorifies suicide and not the memory of Robin Williams. But again, nowhere in the letter did I see the word glorification, or nowhere, and I've read it many times, do I see any inference from Ms. Morris that the display was in some way a glorification of suicide. So, what shall we do? Councilor Manwaring?
Well, I'm not sure.
You have an
what we should-
idea?
No, well, not
We
yet.
could talk a little bit.
Okay,
Figure it
good.
out. It's still pretty early as far as these meetings go.
I have to say that I like Mr. Bryan's, part of Mr. Bryan's comments that he made, because what it brought up for me was that resources in this state for substance abuse and mental health issues is terrible. We are not, we don't provide enough resources for folks who are bipolar, who are depressed, who are dual diagnosed, who have substance abuse issues. And, you know, it made me want to say, oh, let's stand out there, whether the things are there or not, whatever gets decided, but just have a petition to send to the governor and our representatives saying we want more resources available for folks that are caught in these dilemmas. So that's my comment. I guess I'm not exactly sure, you know, what we can do. I'm not sure we have natural events coming up, the Pumpkin Festival, and then we have clearing sidewalks, so it's almost like it's going to end. And I think it would be great if, you know, we could have some sort of community event put on by whatever group, and to say a more formal goodbye again. I think we had one once, but I think we could do that again. But you know what I'm saying, Jim?
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, yeah,
from a city council
I agree.
perspective, I'm not sure what we can do
And
to
my
honor this request.
my instincts are not to try to legislate this display in any way at this point, not to, I mean, I think the concerns are serious. I mean, suicide research shows can have a contagion effect, especially amongst young people, copycat suicides. I mean, since this letter came out last week, I've done a lot of reading and research on this issue, not only what's termed as spontaneous memorials, but, you know, how suicide, especially with, you know, well-publicized suicides, you know, with celebrities and things like that, what happens. And I know years ago, and this wasn't celebrities, but there was a group of young men, I believe in Norway, I think it's the country, who took to jumping in front of trains and dying. And what happened was the media gave very sensationalized coverage, and a lot of people started to do that. It wasn't until public awareness rose and there was some cooperation with the media to provide an educative function as opposed to tabloid-style reporting of these events, that at the actual, you know, people stopped jumping in front of trains. It was a real issue, a real concern. And I know in 1994, when Kurt Cobain killed himself in Seattle, the media there, especially the local Seattle media, was very sensitive to the issues of mental health and substance abuse and the grief that surrounded that. There was a lot of spontaneous memorials, and because of that, researchers found that during that time, and because the media was more sensitive and less sensational about his suicide, calls to the suicide prevention hotline skyrocketed. Record amount of calls, and the number of suicides dropped dramatically during that time. So there can be a positive, I think, effect on I know a few people have mentioned that this evening, to be a little more open and not suppress what happened or make a secret of it, but also, you know, to understand that suicide can be like a wildfire, especially amongst young and vulnerable people, or anybody who is vulnerable. I know schools have strict policies about these types of things. I think it's different than the case here with Mr. Williams. But also, grieving can have a contagious and unifying effect on folks too. And I think that's been seen here in what we've seen in Keene. You know, in our culture, people don't talk about that much. I mean, a generation or two ago, if one of us passed away, our bodies would sit in the house for a few days. You know, we'd be waked and we'd look and touch and talk, and away we went. Now everything's kind of shoved to the side. So perhaps this is a way in this day and age, the 21st century, to kind of create some sort of communal grieving process, which is quite necessary for us humans as well. So those are different issues. I think perhaps your suggestion, Councilman Manwaring, that I don't know if tonight's the night, but we've heard a lot of information. Maybe we can explore ways to create more forums to discuss these issues and find out ways to create more resources for the people who need it and for folks who are working very hard to try to help people in need. But my feeling is this evening that, you know, we've heard, as you've mentioned, the Pumpkin Festival is coming. Those items are going to be removed anyways. It might be helpful to perhaps communicate with the public that if they want to retrieve the items they left, they may before the Pumpkin Festival, a motion to that effect. And if not, perhaps the city can hold on to those objects for a point of time after the festival if folks can't get them, and otherwise, you know, they would be recycled or something if they're not claimed. But as far as the wall goes, we can't. It's obvious we can't do anything about that. So I don't know what other folks think.
I feel strongly what you just said. As we know, when the Pumpkin Festival comes, it's very crowded downtown, especially nice weather. You have a lot of people walking, strollers. It can be very difficult to get around. And I think having that memorial there right now, the way it is, even if it's only a few inches out into the sidewalk, it's going to be a problem. People are going to, unfortunately, I think, be disrespected. There could be some tension there with that. As my role as a police officer and working in Keene for years and working at Pumpkin Festival, unfortunately, at night, there's some rowdiness, and I've seen Central Square, the gazebo get destroyed by people. So I fear that would happen. That could happen too. There's that. People being disrespectful to that memorial during the Pumpkin Festival. So I think it would be a good idea to have a timeline before the Pumpkin Festival, something in the paper saying that these items have to come off the public sidewalk, not the building, but the sidewalk.
Councilor Redford?
Yeah, I think everyone grieves at a different time frame. I know she had said about capping time. I think everyone grieves differently. But realistically, we do have to worry about people walking by it during the Pumpkin Festival, plowing sidewalks this winter. And I think you're right. I think it is more disrespectful if we have people just walking over it, or the plows, chewing things up. So I think there should be some time frame that we set that we collect them. And I'm not saying we have to, get rid of that. I'm just saying that collect it so it's not there on the sidewalk for people to be injured or destroyed during the snow.
Well, do you want to give it?
I'll give it a shot.
Because I was
like
scribbling
Cheryl.
good.
Oh,
And
well,
we'll
you're
cobble
doing
it together with the help of the
Okay, we're gonna
city
cobble it
attorney and
together.
manager.
Okay, I move that MSFI recommend acceptance of this letter from Ms. Morris as informational, and further request from city staff that removal of the objects 3 days, is that maybe 3 days prior to the Pumpkin Festival, to allow folks to pick up objects of devotion.
Okay.
I don't know if 3 days is enough, city staff can tell me.
Well, maybe, would it be, if I may?
You can, go right ahead.
Ask the city manager. There's a protocol during the preparation for the Pumpkin Festival, which I understand is the 18th and 19th of October. Would it be appropriate the language of the motion reflect that city staff will begin picking up, retrieving those items at the Robin Williams Memorial during that process? Would that be?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I think that would work. I think in advance of the actual festival itself would work, and we can do it in a manner that would allow us to put a small sign up on the wall itself, perhaps, in some location saying that the objects can be retrieved at the Public Works office or something of that nature. So there wouldn't really be